Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're decoding Chapter 2 of Aravind Adiga's absolutely incredible novel, The White Tiger. We're going to map out our protagonist Balram's escape from the darkness, giving you exactly what you need to crush your upcoming literature essay. So if you're trying to figure out how a character levels up from a literal nobody to the main character, you are definitely in the right place. Let's get right into it.
Here is your built-in essay outline for today. We'll be hitting Escape from the Darkness, The Original Listener, The Entrepreneurial Leap, The Rooster Coop Trap, and finally, Entering the Light.
All right, Part 1, Escape from the Darkness. Let's start right at the baseline. This is exactly where Balram begins his journey, completely trapped in the mud of Laxmangard and Dhanbad. This setup is the foundation of his entire character arc. At this point, Balram is basically an NPC, a non-playable character. He was pulled out of school way before his education could actually give him any real agency in life. Instead, he's wasting away, smashing coals and wiping tables in a tea shop. You know, in this kind of environment, just staying stagnant means inheriting his father's tragic fate as a human beast of burden. Intelligence is almost a curse here, unless, of course, it can be weaponized.
And sadly, that tragic fate arrives pretty abruptly. The inciting incident of this chapter is his father's death from tuberculosis. But for your essays, you need to remember that this isn't just a personal tragedy for Balram, it is a massive systemic indictment. The absolute filth and horror of that under-resourced hospital, it's the ultimate proof that this corrupt system couldn't care less about the average citizen. It's the exact spark Balram needs to realize, hey, I have to hack my way out of this or I am going to die in the exact same mud.
If you're writing about the two Indias, and you definitely should be, this is a super crucial analytical point. You really have to contrast the rural, muddy squalor of the darkness against the sterile, illuminated bubble of the light. The darkness is all about bodily labor, dirt, and just total exposure to the elements. The light, on the other hand, is represented by things like the perfectly air-conditioned interior of Mr. Ashok's Honda City. Balram's entire hustle is just about breaching the glass of that wealthy, illuminated bubble.
Moving on to Part 2. The Original Listener.
So you might be wondering, how does a guy who got pulled out of school get the education he actually needs to escape? Well, you are definitely going to want to highlight this killer quote for your essays. Balram flat out confesses, "I am not an original thinker, but I am an original listener." This completely proves that his incomplete or what he calls half-baked education actually turns into his greatest weapon. He just absorbs everything around him like a sponge.
The really crucial point here is how he actually applies this listening. Instead of working hard at the tea shop, Balram admits that he does his job with almost total dishonesty and insincerity. Why? Because he's conserving all his energy to eavesdrop on the wealthy customers. And through this strategic listening, he makes a massive discovery. Driving a car is quite literally the closest a servant can ever get to real power in this society.
Which brings us to Part 3, The Entrepreneurial Leap.
Now that he has the intel, Balram has to make his move. He needs to acquire the technical leverage required for some radical social mobility. We can literally trace his hustle from this incubation phase in the tea shop, just watching the elite, to actively upskilling. He takes this huge step of bribing a taxi driver to teach him how to drive. He's actively targeting his next client, aiming specifically for the Stork's compound and Mr. Ashok, who he sees as a super soft target fresh from America.
This whole phase is all about upskilling for survival. He secures the funds, he learns the actual mechanics of the vehicle, and his instructor even takes him to a brothel so he can learn to, quote, be a man. What you should really take away from this is that Balram is completely shedding his old identity. He is transforming from a naive village boy into someone who totally understands and can navigate the ruthless, morally gray rules of the big city.
All right, Part 4, The Rooster Coop Trap.
But hey, leveling up requires cash, right? And getting that cash introduces arguably the most important metaphor in the entire novel, the Great Indian Rooster Coop. Balram observes that never before in human history have so few owed so much to so many. The rooster coop is this immense systemic pressure that keeps 99.9% of the population in perpetual servitude. They can see the organs of their brothers, they know for a fact they are next, and yet they still don't rebel. And honestly, the most sinister part? The padlock on that wire cage is actually the family itself.
To pay for those driving lessons we just talked about, Balram makes a deal with his granny Kusum. But Kusum totally weaponizes family duty. She acts as this heavy, rusted weight of collectivism, demanding that every single rupee of his future earnings be sent back home to maintain the family unit. The tension here is just immense. Family in the darkness isn't a support system. It's literally the primary mechanism of enforcement used by the masters to keep the servants trapped. Every rupee sent home just reinforces the bars of the rooster coop.
And this leads to a critical decision. Balram absolutely flat out refuses to get married. This is such a crucial analytical point for your essays. He looks at his brother Kishan, who is just sinking deeper into the mud of family obligations and traditional roles, and Balram rejects it entirely. He knows that taking a wife means he'll be economically trapped with dependents back in the village, which would essentially lock him inside the coop forever. So he chooses individualism over loyalty.
Finally, Part 5, Entering the Light. Against all odds, the hustle actually works. Balram secures a job at the Stork's compound, driving for Mr. Ashok. But breaching that bubble doesn't mean instant glory, not at all. As driver number 2, Balram is stuck right at the bottom of a brand new ladder. While Ram Prasad, driver number 1, gets to cruise around in the luxury Honda City, Balram is relegated to sweeping, cooking, bathing the dog's cuddles and puddles, massaging the stork's feet, and driving the lesser car.
Naturally, this leads to some incredible resentment. You gotta drop this quote into your analysis. Is there any hatred on earth like the hatred of the number 2 servant for the number 1? It's such a brilliant observation by Adiga. It shows exactly how this oppressive system psychologically conditions the poor to turn on each other, fighting for scraps in the dirt, rather than uniting to fight the masters who built the cage in the first place.
Now, while he's dealing with his rival, Balram is also intensely analyzing his new master. Mr. Ahsoka has just returned from America. He's somewhat naive, kind of softened by Western sensibilities, and he actually believes in the sanitized version of master-servant loyalty. Balram, on the other hand, is highly cynical. He uses that half-baked education to become a total master of mimicry. He begins to, as he puts it, digest his master, perfectly adopting the subservient, pious persona that Ashok expects, all while quietly plotting his next move straight to the top. So what is the ultimate takeaway for Chapter 2? To transition from the darkness into the light, Balram realizes that social mobility is structurally impossible without making some incredibly dark moral compromises. To become the CEO, to become the actual white tiger, a person has to choose between saving their family and saving themselves. Playing by the rules of the old India only reinforces the rooster coop. Balram isn't going to destroy the cage, he is simply going to step outside of it and lock the door right behind him.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on for your exams. Does Balram's ruthless ambition to escape the suffocating darkness actually justify his total lack of dedication and honesty as a worker? I mean, is he a villain or just a survivor in a completely broken system? Grab a screenshot of this question right now. Think deeply about how you would argue it in your literature essay, and I will see you in the next explainer.